1979 was an incredibly busy year for Governor Ray, for our country. We had the Boat People Refugee Conference, had the visit of the Pope, we had the Manson and Algona tornadoes. It was just one after another after another. On top of that was the decision taken on January 1st, 1979 by the United States and China to establish diplomatic relations. What a huge step brought about by both countries having a shared fear and concern about the Soviet Union engaging in ambitious military adventurism. China, remarkably, feared that the Soviets were going to encircle them and they would have a war. And so having an accommodation, establishing relations with the United States, a tilt towards the United States, the US tilting toward China, would make both countries, both Washington and Beijing, feel safer, more comfortable. It's not a firm alliance, but a sensitive and calculated decision. So I had tried to use my relationship with members of the National Security Council staff with whom I had worked when I was in Dick Holbrooke's office. Deng Xiaoping, the leader of China, was coming to the US for an official visit. He, of course, would be going to Washington and he'd be going on the West Coast. But in between, and we were lobbying, and I made a big pitch for him to come to Iowa, and we were in the mix on this. He ended up going to Houston, seeing the Space Center, and as my colleagues at the NSC said, it was so cold in Iowa, our fear was that he'd freeze here and the relationship would freeze along with it. So we didn't have that opportunity, but in October of '79, a delegation of US governors, the first delegation of governors, would be going on an official visit to China to begin as part of the development of relations. And Governor Ray was invited to go as one of the members of that group, and I got to go with him. He got to bring a staff member. So I would be able to, thanks to working for Governor Ray, having taken this assignment to his staff, now I was going to China. And I remember arriving, mysterious Beijing, mysterious China, always wondering what it would be like. And when we got there, China of 1979 was undeveloped. There were hardly any cars on the street, lots of bicycles. You could almost just walk across the street without looking in any direction. There were no modern buildings, no new buildings. Everyone was dressed in drab Mao-type clothes, either olive green, dark blue, or black. There was no color on the street. There was very, very little economic activity on the streets. It was communism. It was socialism through and through. But I got to be in the meeting with the governor's had with Deng Xiaoping, the Paramount leader, the man who had made the decision to establish diplomatic relations with the United States, one of the three most consequential figures of the history of the Chinese Communist Party. And I got to be in the room with him, I got to meet him, shake hands with him, and have a brief exchange. And so as I'm leaving, remember, I'm a 32, 33-year-old American diplomat. I'm a young officer. And I get to say to the Paramount leader of China, I've been working on Cambodia. And Deng Xiaoping stuns me by openly criticizing the communist Khmer Rouge regime. And he says to me through the interpreter, they've made terrible mistakes. And of course, by '79, the Khmer Rouge genocide was well known, that as many as 2 million people may have died out of a population of 7 million. And here is the top leader of China, a communist country, criticizing other communists openly to an American diplomat, and a young American diplomat at that. I was shocked and never forget that. I got to travel around China, my own. I got to go to Shanghai. I went to Guangzhou, known as Canton before. I got to go to Guilin and ride down the Li River. And I never imagined that I might ever get back to China again. This was going to be my one chance on that. But it was forever an intense memory. And when I go to China now in 2019, all these decades later, and I tell Chinese who I meet, I saw what your country was like then and now, with all the incredible array of tall skyscrapers and modern buildings and roads packed with cars, terrible traffic jams. I contrast, wow, what's happened in only about 40 years is a stunning transformation of the country. But I saw it before any of that transformation had taken place.